Nigeria's growing drug menace when age no longer shields the trade. Welcome, this is Taj's Media. Please subscribe for free, like and share. Nigeria's drug problem appears to be entering a disturbing new phase. What was once largely associated with young people, street dealers, and clandestine criminal networks is increasingly showing a much wider and more complex picture, one in which the elderly are sometimes becoming involved, while international syndicates are finding new routes and increasingly sophisticated ways to move dangerous substances into the country. The latest arrest of a 101-year-old great-grandmother in Ilison, Ogun State, allegedly for selling cannabis, has shocked many Nigerians. According to the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, the woman was arrested on August 15 with 90 grams of skunk and reportedly told investigators that she entered the illicit trade after a fire destroyed her provision shop. The agency also alleged that her daughter supplied the cannabis for onward sale. The case is extraordinary because of her age. At 101, one would ordinarily expect such a woman to be receiving care and protection from her family and community. Instead, according to the allegations, she became part of a local drug distribution chain. But the bigger question is, what does this tell us about the depth of Nigeria's drug problem? First, it demonstrates that drug trafficking is not necessarily confined to a particular age group. Elderly people can become involved as dealers, couriers, or intermediaries, whether because of economic hardship, family influence, manipulation by criminal networks, or the promise of quick income. The 101-year-old woman's story, if established in court, should therefore be examined beyond the sensational headline. Her explanation about losing her means of livelihood raises questions about poverty, social protection, and the vulnerability of elderly Nigerians. However, poverty cannot become an excuse for drug trafficking. Illegal drugs destroy lives, families, and communities. At the same time, law enforcement and social intervention must recognize that some elderly suspects may themselves be victims of exploitation by more sophisticated criminal operators. And this is where the role of the alleged supplier, the woman's daughter, becomes particularly significant. If investigators establish the allegation, the real story may not simply be about a 101-year-old woman selling cannabis. It may be about a wider distribution network using an elderly person as its retail point. That possibility deserves serious investigation. The elderly dimension is not entirely new. In recent months, NDLEA operators have also involved all the suspects, including a 63-year-old Chinese woman accused of attempting to smuggle a large consignment of synthetic cannabis into Nigeria. This suggests that criminal syndicates may sometimes exploit assumptions that elderly travelers are less likely to attract suspicion. But perhaps the most worrying development in the latest NDA operation is not the centenarian, it is the scale and international character of the seizures. The agency says it intercepted more than 1.49 tons of cannabis, indica, popularly known as loud, in 2 containers at the Apapa and Lekki ports in Lagos. One container reportedly contained about 1,090.5 kilograms, while another yielded approximately 400 kilograms. The NDLEA estimated the combined street value at more than 4.4 billion naira. This is completely different level of operation from the 90 grams allegedly found with the centenarian. Here, we are talking about an international supply chain capable of moving more than a ton of illicit drugs through maritime cargo channels. According to the NDLEA, both consignments originated from Thailand, representing the agency's first reported seizure of illicit drugs shipped from Thailand through Nigeria's maritime corridor. The containers were reportedly declared to contain legitimate goods, but investigators found large quantities of cannabis inside. This should be a major warning to Nigeria's security agencies. Nigeria is not merely dealing with local cannabis cultivation and street-level distribution. The country is also confronting international trafficking networks that are constantly looking for new routes, new concealment methods, and new markets. And the varieties of substances being intercepted are equally concerning. Beyond cannabis and loud, the NDLEA reported seizures involving cocaine, methamphetamine, opioids, and other illicit substances. In Akwa Ibom, Officers reportedly intercepted a wooden boat carrying narcotics towards fishing settlements in Cameroon, including more than 42 kilograms of skunk and cocaine concealed inside a wrap of cassava fufu. The use of food items to conceal cocaine tells us something important about drug traffickers are becoming increasingly creative. They are necessarily relying on traditional methods of smuggling. Drugs can be hidden in legitimate cargo, food products, luggage, vehicles, boats, and other seemingly ordinary channels. Therefore, Nigeria's response must also become more sophisticated. The government cannot win this battle through arrest alone. Yes, arrests are necessary, seizures are necessary, prosecution is necessary. But if Nigeria only intercepts drugs after they have entered the country will constantly be fighting the symptoms rather than dismantling the networks behind the trade. There must be stronger intelligence sharing between the NDLEA, Nigeria Customs Service, Nigerian Navy, police, immigration authorities, and international law enforcement agencies. Our seaports also require sustained investment in technology, cargo profiling, intelligence analysis, and scanning systems. The latest Thailand-linked seizure demonstrates why this is important. If criminal organizations discover that maritime routes can be exploited to bring large quantities of synthetic cannabis into Nigeria, they will continue experimenting with new routes whenever an existing route becomes too risky. Nigeria must therefore anticipate trafficking patterns rather than simply react to them. There is also another dimension we must not ignore: the demand side. A trafficking network survives because there is a market. As long as the people are willing to buy and consume these substances, criminals will find ways to supply them. This means the fight against drugs must go beyond the NDLEA and the security agencies. Parents, schools, religious organizations, traditional institutions, community leaders, and civil society organizations all have important roles to play. Young Nigerians, especially, need stronger education about the dangers associated with increasingly potent synthetic substances. But education alone is not enough. Nigeria must also strengthen rehabilitation and treatment for people suffering from drug dependence. Addiction should be treated as both a public health and security issue. A person battling dependency needs intervention, counseling, and rehabilitation, not simply condemnation. At the same time, communities must become more vigilant. The 101-year-old case demonstrates how close drug distribution can be to ordinary households. It may not always happen in some mysterious warehouse or hidden criminal compound. It can take place within neighborhoods, families, and communities. That is why community intelligence is so important. People must be encouraged to report suspicious activities without exposing themselves to unnecessary danger. The government must also address the economic conditions that make vulnerable people susceptible to criminal exploitation. If elderly persons loses a livelihood and has no meaningful social support, criminal elements may find an opportunity to recruit or manipulate that person. Again, this does not excuse criminal conduct, but prevention requires understanding the conditions that criminals exploit. Ultimately, the latest NDLEA operations should be treated as both a success story and a warning. They are a success because significant quantities of illicit drugs were intercepted before reaching the streets. The agency's operations have clearly disrupted several trafficking attempts, but they are also a warning because the quantities, varieties, and routes involved show that the drug trade is becoming more sophisticated.